welcome to another episode of Fireside Leadership. I am your co-host, Janice Lee, and with me is the lovely Liza Magcale.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us again today.
Yeah, and today we're super excited to have here with us today John David Mann. He's an award-winning author. He's had many books and sold 3 million copies in 36 languages across the globe. And if you've been watching along on the podcast, John has actually co-wrote a series of books of The Go-Giver with Bob Burg, which is like a national bestseller and one of Liza and my favorites. And before I get into talking more about John's accomplishments, I will have to go read. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to read through just because there's just so many accolades. I want to make sure I don't miss anything. So he's actually written the New York Best Time Selling memoir, The Red Circle, with former Navy SEAL Brandon Webb, and the New York Times best-selling parable, The LATTE Factor, with personal finance legend David Bach. So as a student or as a teenager, John was an award-winning composer and cellist, and this was before he switched over to careers in entrepreneurship and writing. So I'm interested in hearing about that story. And of course, of the most favorite topic, what we want to talk about today is really leadership. And he actually wrote a book called Take the Lead, which is named one of the best-selling leadership books in 2011 by the Washington Post. So welcome to our series. We're really so honored to have you here with us today, John.
Thank you, Janice. It is lovely to be here. I can't wait.
Yes.
So let's talk about, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I'm going to let you take it away.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's clear that you love leadership. Before we jumped on, he was talking about his leadership starting when he was a teenager. Where would you think that your leadership started, John?
Okay, kind of everything in my career, in my strange and weird and pinball game like career has basically come from my patchwork of passions and interests. You know, I've never really had much of a plan, or if I have, it's usually not worked. So I have kind of pinged and ponged through different careers in my life, as you know, Janice kind of hinted at that. And so leadership has just been kind of, I've always kind of followed where my interest has gone, and there have been people who've followed with me. But my dad was a choral conductor. He was a musicologist and also an active musician, a conductor. He conducted the Bethlehem Bach Choir in Bethlehem, PA for many years, and very accomplished conductor of Bach and Handel. And I, playing the cello, I had the opportunity to play under him. Actually, I apprenticed under him as a conductor at one point also. And you know, for me, being a conductor, I mean, of music, is kind of like the archetype of leadership. I mean, you stand up there and you move your hands and you make gestures, and you know, you communicate wordlessly, often typically soundlessly, and you know, 100 musicians make this magnificent thing happen. So leadership has kind of always been in my environment, I think, and it kind of took off in my high school years, and it's just never left me alone.
So how did you make the transition from cellist to your next ping pong move?
Yeah, when I was a teenager, as I said, I was playing the cello. I was active as a composer. That was kind of my passion, my love. And classical music has always been my primary love. Not counting my wife, who is my primary love, but classical music is still kind of my native language. I breathe classical music. When I'm writing, I'm kind of hearing it or thinking it in musical terms. But as a performer, I became very interested in the kind of the health and welfare of audiences. It's like, I'm playing this lovely music and they're enjoying it, but then they're going to go home to their lives, and then what's going to happen? I wanted to find ways to have an impact on people's lives that went beyond, I hate to use the word entertainment, because classical music feels like much more than the word suggests, entertainment, but I wanted to find a way of making a bigger, more meaningful, or let's say more lasting impact on people's lives. And that's, you know, that led me to nutrition and health, which I was in that area for a while, and into business and entrepreneurship, and eventually, you know, into writing, which is where I find myself now.
That's amazing. So you've written a couple of books on leadership.
Couple.
Couple. How many exactly have you written?
I don't know how many, but I will tell you a few.
Okay.
So yeah, it's funny, all of my books, leadership tends to kind of leak in as a theme. And I'll give you an example. But first, I think, Janice, you mentioned Take the Lead, Tom Peters, who wrote In Search of Excellence, he named it the best leadership book of 2011. I was writing, kind of ghostwriting for Betsy Myers, who was in the Clinton White House. She had government experience, and that was a book on leadership. I wrote a book called Real Leadership, was a memoir of a business leader, John Addison, who was in the corporate world. One of the Go-Giver books is called The Go-Giver Leader. And Bob and I are very much kind of an equal partnership in our content and our ideas and our writing, but we often one of us sort of takes the lead, if you will, in a book. The Go-Giver was really us, like a mix us in a barrel, and that's what comes out. The Go-Giver Leader sort of tilted more to my experience. The Go-Giver Influence tilted a little more to his experience. Well, maybe we'll talk about the Go-Giver Marriage, which tilts very much toward my experience, and my wife. But the Go-Giver Leader was kind of my experience and thinking about leadership up to that point, funneled into the Go-Giver universe of Pindar and the various people in that. But you know, it's funny. I have a novel coming out, my first novel. So here it's called Steel Fear. Steel Fear. It's a thriller. It's a military crime novel. You'd think it has nothing to do with Go-Giver or anything else I've done, right? It's a story about a disgraced Navy SEAL who stalks a serial killer on an aircraft carrier in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. What? So that, which is coming out this July. And it's a funny thing. You crack open the pages, you start reading a bit, and pretty soon you find that what we're really talking about is great leadership and terrible leadership. It's all about leadership, because there is this terrible killer in the boat, but the reason that he does what he does, or that he can do what he does, is because there's an unhealthy environment created, which ultimately stems from weak leadership. I mean, and you see that really clearly. Yeah, leadership is to me is such a glue, both in the positive and negative sense. You know, if you go walk into a business and you're not happy with your experience there, it comes down to the leadership. If you walk into a business and you have a wonderful experience, it comes down to the leadership. You know, leadership kind of is the wellspring of so much else.
The beginning of, absolutely. So congratulations on your new book, by the way.
Hey, thank you.
Right. So moving into another genre and for leadership to spill into it is amazing. And you can kind of tell already, just based on the synopsis that you gave us, that there is going to be a little bit of that in there. So is there more of leadership of self in that book as opposed to leadership of people? Because it is coming from a military background, but Janice and I actually met through a personal development company, and personal and professional development, we've learned, is really all in the same, because it does stem from leadership of self.
Yes.
Do you want to make a comment on that and how your writing?
You know, sure. So leadership of self. I mean, for me, one of the most significant lessons I learned in my entire adult life, and this is back when I was in my 30s, I learned partly through reading and partly through just my own experience. I learned the impact that my self-talk has on me. I learned the impact of what is going on in my head, or what I'm saying to myself has on not only how I behave, but even what happens to me. You'll find that expressed actually right in the original Go-Giver book. But Pindar says, you'll be surprised, Joe, how much you have to do with what happens to you, I think is the line. The novel, and Janice, you mentioned the memoir, The Red Circle. I teamed up with this Navy SEAL, the Navy SEAL sniper, Brandon Webb, for The Red Circle. It's his memoir. We've written 6 books together. This novel is our 7th. We wrote this together, and we have completely different backgrounds. In my 20s, I was playing the cello in string quartets in an orchestra. In his 20s, he was learning how to be a Navy SEAL sniper, right? And he was on aircraft carriers, and he was in the middle of Afghanistan and so forth. But our values clicked just like that. We discovered that we really were completely simpatico on a certain level of basic values. And Brandon was after he came out of the field in Afghanistan, he was called back to the States, and he ended up partnering with another sniper to completely remake the SEAL sniper course. to refashion it head to toe for the 21st century. And they introduced all kinds of innovations, all kinds of scientific and sort of didactic and educational innovations. But he says the number one innovation that he made to the course, which he thinks is the primary factor that resulted in a whole generation of the best snipers in history, basically, was a course in self-management, mental management. He taught a course in how to pay attention to what you're saying to yourself and how to manage that, how to change the tapes in your brain. It sounds very woo-woo, you know, for a Navy SEAL, but no. This is like quintessential stuff for their actual tactical, operational, you know, effectiveness, as it is for everything. So yeah, I mean, you ask about self-leadership, but that said, in Steel Fear, you know, a lot of it is about the different ways that leadership of others shows up too, because, you know, we're all leading others. This is a point we made in Take the Lead, but we're all leaders. We may not have that mantle officially, we may not have that title, but we all have that impact in one sphere or another.
Yeah, I love that, those comments. And you've mentioned this word a few times during our conversation, is that of impact, right?
Yeah.
You started off, even though you were a cellist, you're trying to figure out like, what impact can I have on my audience? It seems to be like a theme that I notice is carrying through. And it sounds like you found a way to carry that impact through different means, whether it's through your fiction writing, the parables that you write through Go Giver, through, I guess, some of the more memoir type books. What are some messages that you would want to share with people? Like you mentioned values, certain leadership values that you're simpatico with people on. What are some key values that you'd want to share with people to let them know, like, hey, even though you're in a different situation than what this person or that person, these are the common things that you can use regardless of where you're at?
Yeah, what a great question. And it makes me think. I have to think to answer that. What a frightening thing, right? Actually thinking. So yeah, I mean, I think certainly one of the themes, I guess, I mean, I have sort of a philosophical orientation, which I don't try to blow this horn too overtly in my writing, but my philosophical orientation is that the universe is basically a benign place, that it has a bias toward our success as humans, as individuals. I don't just mean success financially, I mean success in every sense, success in a human sense, interpersonal sense, emotional sense, you know, career sense. So I believe that, you know, we're already such miraculous organisms and creations here that the universe is kind of set up for our success, and that the biggest impediment is us. And so that one of our biggest jobs is to pick our way through our lives, removing ourselves from getting in the way as much as possible. And this has been kind of a strange theme for me, because I'm very much a believer in this whole thing of persistence and of believing in yourself and in following your passion. And, you know, all of the messages that we get about don't give up on your dreams, and nobody knows you the way you know yourself, and you know, and all this is great. But at the same time, there's this other side, which is that frequently the universe around us, which may express itself as people in our environment, know us better than we know ourselves. You know, one of the themes of my stuff is self-improvement and continuous self-evaluation, getting better, just getting better at what we do, which requires both faith and humility. Faith that we can be just extraordinary, and enough humility to recognize that we're messing up right and left currently, and that we have lots of room for improvement. I'll give you a quick example, and that's the Go Giver. The Go Giver, I hadn't published a lot of books. I hadn't published any books when I wrote the Go Giver with Bob. And I knew an agent, a literary agent, through a friend of a friend. I knew of her, I knew her name, right? And she was the agent who originally sold the 1 Minute Manager, which was one of our sort of our heroes as books go. But I didn't know her. So we wrote the Go Giver, and a friend of mine promised me he'd give us an introduction to her. So I sent the manuscript to the agent's office, and I got back a call saying, "We like this, we'd like to represent you. Are you open to some changes?" And I was like, "Yes, I am open to some changes." So the thing came back covered with writing, and edited and revised furiously. And we spent some months on that and revised the thing like crazy. And then she packaged it up with a proposal and sent it off to New York to publishers. Boom. 12 publishers all said no. Rejection, 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 rejection. Nobody wanted it. And so everyone said things like, we like this, we like the writing, we like the story, but it's not quite right for us. We're not quite sure it really works. The middle part gets bogged down, the end part. They all had their reasons. But what they were all saying was, no, go away. So we did. We took the book back and reworked it. We took it back and spent probably 9 months kind of taking it apart and putting it back together again. Like taking a suit of clothes and taking out all the stitching and then resewing it back together again. And then our agent, bless her, took it back to New York again. And we got 12 more no's. And then finally a yes. It was actually the 23rd publisher said, I'll take that. And it's since sold almost 1 million copies. With all the Go Giver books in total have sold well more than 1 million. As you said, 3 dozen languages. It won an award in 2017 for an Evergreen Award, the so-called Evergreen Award for its global positive impact. And that was 10 years after it was published. So, and it almost didn't happen. But here's the point. Here's the moral of the story. The moral of the story, you might say, is be persistent, follow your dreams, never give up, all that kind of stuff. Keep knocking on doors. Well, yeah, that's sort of the point, but not exactly, or not only, because the truth is, if one of those first 12 publishers had said yes and published it the way it was then, you would never have heard of it. And we wouldn't be having this conversation because it wasn't ready. It wasn't very good, honestly. So I wrote a book called How to Write Good, or at least Gooder. And in that book, I devote a whole chapter to this story, The Go Giver. And I show you the first page of the story, the way it was when I sent it off to the agent originally, and the way it was eventually published. And what it took to get from here to there is what it takes for every one of us to get from here to there. And that journey, that path of having the humility to say, oops, I'm sorry, I messed up, I'm incomplete, and the faith to soldier on and see, that the goal is possible. That to me is just, that's the human journey. It's so important. And so many people give up on it. So many people give up either in the faith that they can go there, or they let go of the humility that makes them unable to see their own deficiencies, and therefore they just say, well, I like myself the way I am. Deal with it.
Yeah. Right. I
works.
resonate with so many points that you just said, and I just to recap from the very beginning when you started talking about the universe is benign. It's like the universe is conspiring for us, but some of us don't see it that way.
Yes.
It's definitely true. And just the persistence for sure. Knowing, I think what resonates with me is that you're saying that keep an eye on what you want to achieve. It's okay that it didn't happen in the way that you wanted it to, right?
Yes.
But it's the journey and self-improvement. What I want to know is through all those no's,
Yes.
we're all bound to get them. People are like, how do you withstand all the no's? What tools do you have in place to help yourself pull out of that situation? Because clearly you had a huge passion for this novel. Otherwise you wouldn't continue to do the rewrites after 2 dozen no's before you got to the final product. What did you tell yourself, or what practices did you do to kind of keep going in the face of all that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's, I mentioned earlier this thing about learning about self-talk, my self-talk, and it's I still do it today. I mean, and this has been, this is part of the answer to that question. I'll sit down in the morning. I like to write first thing in the morning, 5 o'clock, 5:30, I'm in my chair writing. And I'll sit down with a chapter that I'm about to write, and I kind of look at the blank page, or look at the title, or look at the idea of the chapter, and I go, and I find myself saying, I don't think this is going to work. We just wrote the Go Giver Marriage. This is the 4th Go Giver parable, right? So we've had 3 Go Giver parables out, plus the Go Giver Sell More, which have done pretty well, right? So there should be enough evidence that this is going to work. But regardless of all that evidence, I'm sitting down with the Go Giver Marriage. This just happened a few months ago, and I'm saying, I don't think this one's going to work. I don't know. I don't see it. I'm not seeing this is just not working. I don't know if I have. What I've learned to do is to notice that, hear it. Actually, I mostly say it out loud if I'm by myself. If I'm walking down the street, I try not to say these things out loud because they'll put me away. But I notice what I'm saying and flip it. And I don't flip it to something ridiculous like, this is fantastic, I'm doing a great job, because that's not true. I don't want to flip it to some fantasy. I say, this is terrible. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how this works. Flip that to, I don't see how this is going to work, but I can't wait to find out. I know it's there. I know there's a great story in here. I'm having difficulty finding the entrance. It's like, where is it? But I know it's in there. So having the faith that the answers are there, noticing that I'm frustrated that I can't see them, and being able to talk to myself in a way that talks me, toward it without being really negative. That's a big part of the answer to your question. How do you withstand all that noise? Another big part is my wife, and before that, my parents. When I was a kid, my mom had this sort of, you can do anything you set your mind to attitude. She completely, when my friends and I were starting our own high school, it was my parents. They were the first set of parents who said, totally, you guys go. This is great. Not all of us had a mom or a dad who believed in us totally, or who showed that totally. Not all of us even have a spouse, who is that for us. But that's okay. We have to learn how to be it for ourselves, and to surround ourselves with at least 1, 2, 3 people who do that for us. My wife is that for me, and I have a few friends. I could probably name 4 right now who are my cheerleaders. I can be honest about my foibles and failings, and they just think that where I'm going is fantastic. I think that's critical. You gotta have that environment of positivity. You can't do it on your own.
Really, really appreciate that recap. It's really tangible and people can really walk away with something. Can we speak to the power of consistency? Because you speak of writing every day between 5 and 5:30.
Yes. Yeah. It's funny. I wrote this book with a guy called The Slight Edge, and it's if you look at it on Amazon, look at all the reader reviews. There's like 50% of them say this book has totally changed my life. It's the best book I ever read, which I think is a little bit of a hyperbole. And the other 50 say this book is trash. It's nonsense. The guy says the same thing over and over and over again. Yes, but that's the point. You missed the point. This thing about consistency, I learned this as a cellist. I learned this learning how to play the cello, because you play stuff every day. You play, and it doesn't sound any less terrible than it sounded yesterday, to be honest. And I do the same thing now as I'm writing. I take a chapter of a book, and it's, can I be honest? It's terrible. It's like it's garbage crap. It's like no good. And I know that because I'm, I can read. But I sit with it and I work on it. And then the next day I work on it a little bit more. And, it's the consistency of working on it every day. For me, I find that a routine, catching myself at my best hour, is really, really helpful. I haven't always been able to do that all my life, but whenever I've been able to do it, I've progressed better. I have a routine for writing. I sit down with the blank page or whatever I'm working on, 5:30. It used to be 6. And then I heard Don Winslow on a Zoom say he starts writing at 5. And I thought, if Don Winslow does it, I should do it too. So I start at 5 or 5:30, and I'll work for an hour, 2 hours, maybe 3 hours, and all alone in my book with a cup of tea. And some days I get pages, some days I get a sentence, and I don't judge either of those better or worse than the other. It's the doing of it. It's the doing of it. It's the doing of it. And it's that faith again, that at the end of the path, you're going to have an outcome.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And it's not about the outcomes, but you're saying that you're doing the same thing every day. It's creating that habit. It's forming that behavior so that it becomes something that's second nature.
It is. And that's kind of the point of the Slight Edge. It's like fitness. Everybody knows this with fitness. Like you do something. I have like a 15-minute workout in the morning. You do that workout, you're not measurably stronger. You don't weigh any differently. Your muscles aren't any more toned at the end of the day. Even at the end of the week, you may not see any results. So if you stop, you say, this is getting nowhere, and you stop, then you'll get nowhere. You have to keep going without seeing the results. You have to keep going without being able to experience where it's leading, just kind of having the faith plus the knowledge where it's leading. Everybody understands that in relation to fitness. They get it intellectually. It's the same thing with food. It's the same thing with relationships. You say, I love you to somebody 2 or 3 times, it may not change their life. But you say it 50 times and you mean it, you're making a difference. So yeah, the consistency and faith put together, faith in your outcome, that's the only way you accomplish something great, is the consistent repetition of seemingly insignificant little actions going in the direction toward the path of your goal.
I love it. It's amazing. You mentioned that, consistently getting to your goal. And we touched on this a little bit earlier. You talked a little bit about success. And for a lot of people, success is very one-dimensional. It could be in their career or financial success. What is your definition of success? I mean, you've done a lot of different things. You've been successful in many of those things. You said, award-winning musician, cellist and composer, now author, entrepreneur. How would you define success?
First I would say that I've also created a lot of failures. I've had 2 marriages that ended in divorce. I had a business that ended in bankruptcy. I've had many, many crashes and burns in my life. And I think that, a lot of that was just sort of the process of growing and learning, but a lot of that was the feedback loop of my own short-sightedness in this sense. For most of my life, I've seen success in terms of a future accomplishment. And so sort of by that definition, success is something that's not happening right now. And if your definition of success is something that's not happening right now, then you are a walking, talking sabotage machine. You have to find some way of defining. It's great to have goals. It's great to have targets. I have them. Everyone has them. But I think it's essential to find a definition of success that you can experience today, right now. I didn't understand that for most of my life. So my definition of success right now is something like living with someone I love, and every day doing what I was put here to do and doing it well. Now, writing, that's what I was put here to do, and I'm doing it as well as I can, weller than I used to. I have places where I want it to get. I've never been a #1 New York Times bestseller. I've never sold it. There are lots of kind of impact points, to use that word again. There are lots of benchmarks and milestones that I'd love to achieve, but they're only kind of fringe benefits of the success. The success is every day. Success is a daily experience. And right now I'm happier than I've ever been in my life, not because I'm richer or healthier. I think I am healthier, but that's just the point. It's because I'm every day living the thing that is my definition of success. So by definition, I guess I'm successful.
That is amazing. Amazing. Every day is the best day ever. And we're just looking for massive evidence of what's making it the best day ever.
Even the lousy ones.
Even the lousy ones, because they really are for you, right? To build that muscle strength.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for your candidness also about, what are seemingly failures to some that are actually part of your stretch points to grow to where you are right now.
Well said. Really well said.
Beautiful.
And I love that. Yeah. Thank you so much for the shares, because I think it's really helpful for people listening that, just because what people see as success right now, there's stories that came with it and the lessons and learnings. And we are all the same. Like you and I, Liza, yourself and I, we're all no different. We're just going on different journeys, but we're all trying to get to the same place, whatever that is for us. Yeah. So I really like that.
When we all have messy pasts. even the nicest and cleanest and most well put together of us.
Exactly. So tell us what's up and coming for you. So we heard in the spring, Steel Fear.
Actually, Steel Fear is coming in July. It's coming in 2 months. That's okay. 2 months. 2 months away. It's already up on, it's Amazon, Barnes, Indie Books, everywhere. And that's exciting. There is in development a streaming TV series based on the book, but in development is Hollywood term that basically means who knows. So I'll announce it on my website when it's a definite thing. But so that's coming out, and that's already a series that I'm working on book 2. We sold it as a 2-book deal to Bantam, and I suspect there'll be more after book 2. So this is book 1 coming in July. There'll be book 2 coming the following summer. So that's the whole novel series is off and running. As I mentioned, there's the Go-Giver Marriage, which is the next in the Go-Giver series. And I love the Go-Giver universe. In each of the Go-Giver parables, there are characters from the previous story that reappear in the next. So they overlap. It's the same town that this stuff all happens in, same city. And in the Go-Giver Marriage, there are characters from all 3 of the other books that come back and make an appearance. And that was really a joy. I don't know if there'll be more Go-Giver books after that. Maybe so. And then there'll be other books beyond that. I don't know what they are.
Well, whatever they are, we're looking very forward to seeing them.
Yeah, me too. I can't wait to read them. And so part of the reason I write these books is I want to read them. I've heard authors say after I read something, I can't read it. And I was like, really? Why did you write it? I love reading my books because that's why I wrote them, is because I love these characters, Pindar, Joe, Ernesto, Gus, all these people. It's like they fascinate me.
Awesome. They fascinate us as well. Really wanted to thank you today, John, for coming on the podcast. Loved all the stories that you were able to share. Check out some of the books. Guys, if you haven't read some of the Go-Giver series book, Take the Lead, Red Circle, the new book that's coming out, Steel Fear, the Go-Giver Marriage that will be coming out. Look out for that in spring. Liza, do you have any other final thoughts to share?
No, just really thank you. It's been an honor to listen to you because I'm hearing parts of the way that you speak reminds me and brings me back to the audiobooks of the Go-Giver series. And congratulations on your upcoming release in July. And
thank you so much.
Yeah, and the possibility.
Thank you so much. You two are fabulous. I mean, you make a great back and forth because you're so different, but you click so well. So it's sometimes having 2 hosts can be like a weird ping pong experience. This is just thoroughly enjoyable. So thank you.
Thank you so much. We really enjoy doing things together. We believe in like a philosophy of like doing things that we enjoy that have impact. So very simpatico with the messages that you were sharing with us.
Collaboration rules.
Apparently you work with a lot of different people to tell the story, right? You've written a whole bunch of books and a lot of, it's very inspirational. And thank you for making it okay for people to ping pong along and, and still arrive at success. So really appreciate your time today, John.
Thank you so much.
All right.
So we're just going to wrap up. Thank you again to John. This is another episode of Fireside Leadership with Janice and Liza.
Thanks, everybody. See you next time.
Thanks, everyone.